Silas, I know we've connected before. What's on your mind? What's going on for you?
Yeah, so like for me, good to hear, see everybody on here, and shout out to that was a lady from Hagerstown, Maryland. I went to school in Frostburg State, so I know Hagerstown, Maryland, nice place. But for me, just basically planning like how to study. Basically, I would like to do the classes, the LSAT in December this year. And I have a full-time job as well. So I spend about 2 hours a day on Khan Academy. That's my primary training forum right now. I don't know what everybody's thoughts are about that, or your thoughts are about that, or do I need to scale it up, maybe explore other training materials? But right now, primarily, Khan Academy is my go-to training forum.
Okay, cool. So, Khan is a good starting point. It's free. You can't knock that. But one issue you're going to face is that you're going to see the same questions again and again and again. LSAT gave them a very limited pool of questions to work with. Then you've got 10 practice tests on there. So it's a starting point, but it's not enough. I wouldn't really call that a full comprehensive course. It's more like some bite-sized lessons along with some practice questions and explanations. So it's a starting point, but I wouldn't make that the only thing that you use.
Okay.
Are there any particular weak areas that you're facing in terms of certain question types?
No, actually, my challenge mainly has been reading comprehension and logic games, and mainly it's the timing. Anytime I struggle with getting the test done on time, and I see that if I have more time, I can get it all right. But when I try to time myself, that is where the challenge is.
Yeah. So timing. When are you taking the LSAT? What's your target test date?
December this year.
Okay. All right. So you've got some time. You've got plenty of time if you're aiming to take it this fall, this winter. This particular year, there's not actually a December LSAT. You've got November, then you've got January. But either way, we're speaking now very beginning of July. You've got a good 5 months or more. So I wouldn't feel the need to rush the timing component in particular. You'll get there. For now, just focus on the basics. Focus on learning the fundamentals and understanding things on a deep level, untimed first, before you move into timing. But
okay.
You'll get there. Just give it time.
Okay.
Anything else going on for you? Let me ask you this actually. What's your reading comp approach right now?
Like I said, I'm relying primarily on Khan. So, I go there, read the comprehension, and then answer the questions pretty much. I've also been reading some of the strategies, like they tell you, how to approach the first paragraph, what the first paragraph means, what the last paragraph means, what the first sentence on a paragraph means, all that, and basically just doing the test.
Okay, so you're taking an approach where you're looking to maybe summarize each of the paragraphs. Yes. I want to get a sense of what your actual approach is in terms of note-taking, highlighting, things of that nature.
Yes, note-taking. I do note-taking, I highlight, but sometimes I feel like they're slowing me down. So it's like I just basically read the comprehension, then go start tackling the questions.
Gotcha. And how many minutes are you taking on your initial read of the passage before getting into the questions?
4 to 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So you got 45 minutes on your initial read plus note taking, but you've got an average of 8:45 per passage.
Yes.
So you're giving yourself maybe 30 seconds a question, maybe 45 seconds a question. It's not enough. Okay. And 8:45 is only an average. Some passages you might take more than that amount of time, but then you got to balance it out where others would take less than that amount of time. And I told you not to worry about timing just yet, but also recognize that an approach where you're taking 4 to 5 minutes on your initial read of the passage, it's not going to give you enough time for the questions. So think about how you might rearrange that approach or restructure your approach where you're spending less time up front.
Okay.
Just have it in the back of your mind that what's working for you now in terms of getting a deep understanding, you will have to modify that in some way, probably with a more minimal note-taking or marking strategy. So keep that in mind for now. I know we got a lot of other folks asking questions here, so I'll leave off with you, but we could circle back if you got something else.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you, Silas. All right, so Chelsea, I know that you had your hand raised.
I look kind of crazy right now. So.
Don't we all? Hey, Chelsea, welcome.
Hey. So, okay. My question was, how do I speed up as far as reading comp, I see, I don't know his name, but he just spoke not too long.
Silas, yeah.
Silas. Yeah. How would you approach as a first time? Cause I just recently started like taking my studies seriously. I also do work full time as well. So I try to get in 2 hours a day. It's not the best, but I try to. How would you say to approach reading comp and to get faster at reading comp?
Okay, well, let me ask you this. I'll ask you the same thing I asked Silas. What's your approach right now when you see a passage?
I don't have one.
No approach. So
No.
if I didn't tell you anything and you were going to do a passage after we get off this call, what would you do when you had the passage and the questions? And I give you 35 minutes for passages.
Honestly, I would just sit down and read and try to highlight. Well, I would try to get an idea of what the questions are first, like read the questions first, try to get an idea from that, and then probably go to the actual passage and try to see what's important there. Or I would probably read the passage, think what's important, and then go to the questions. But I'm not sure.
Okay, and what would you highlight exactly?
See, that's the thing. I don't know.
And would you be highlighting, are you using a book? Are you using a PDF? Are you using Law Hub? Where are you doing the questions?
So I would probably use is Khan Academy for reading comp.
Cool. So you're using it maybe on a desktop computer or a laptop,
right.
and you're marking on there to do any highlighting.
Right.
Okay, so one thing you should know is that the highlighting tools you use elsewhere are not the same as the ones that you're going to use on the actual digital LSAT or the LSAT-Flex. And you'll see on Law Hub, the highlighting tool sucks. It's not that responsive. It's kind of clunky. So I wouldn't be counting on using the highlighter specifically.
Okay.
Also, people end up highlighting everything, or they end up highlighting things that don't always end up being useful. So I recommend a really minimal marking strategy where I personally probably wouldn't highlight or underline anything at all.
Okay.
And if you do highlight, maybe you want to highlight only certain key things like the main idea, the author's opinion, but not really much more than that.
Okay.
You've also got scratch paper that you're using for this?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you write anything down on there?
Using that for also like logical reasoning and logic games, because that's what I'm starting off with now. But I really haven't touched reading comp too much as of yet, and I know I have to get there eventually. I'm also planning to take it in November as well. So.
Okay, cool. So you got some time to figure it out also.
Right. Yeah.
That's good.
And then also another question is, since I'm thinking to apply for 2021, when do you think is like the best time to take the LSAT? That's another question, because I don't know if I'm going to be fully prepared for November. So what would you suggest to get myself ready and prepared for the cycle for 2021? Sorry.
All right, sure. So I'll address that and then circle back to a bit more on reading comp. So We're speaking now July 1st. November LSAT is mid-November. You've got 4.5 months, and you've already been studying a little bit already. So you could be ready by November. And if you take it in November, you apply, let's say you get the score back 2 to 3 weeks later, you apply then in late November, early December, you're good. That's perfectly a fine time in the cycle. Nothing wrong with that. If you wanted to take it in January, that could be okay also. It's a little bit later than some people would recommend, but if you can get even a couple points higher by taking it in January rather than November, it's worth delaying it. And you could do both. You could do the November and the January if you want.
Okay.
That's fine too.
Okay.
Applying early is better when possible, but later with a higher score or higher GPA also will always beat that.
Okay.
Now back to reading comp. If I were to recommend an ideal approach from scratch, what I'll tell you is that the people who do best on reading comp tend to mark very little or not even at all. And so I wouldn't highlight or underline anything. I wouldn't mess around with the annotation tools on the digital LSAT or the Flex. I would just maybe summarize with a few keywords or a key phrase what the author's opinion is, what the main idea is. That's it, nothing more.
Okay. Got it.
And I would spend about 2.5 to 3 minutes on the initial read of the passage, then the rest of the time on the questions. Now, you mentioned something, I think you said about reading the questions before the passage. Is that one thing you might do?
Right.
Have you tried that out?
I have not. Other companies, they usually tell you to read the prompt first. So I thought it would be the same for reading comp. So I just
Well,
want to see.
the difference is though that logical reasoning, you've got individual bite-sized questions. In
Right.
reading comp, you've got a set of 6 to 7 questions.
Right.
You're telling me you're going to hold all those in your head, then read a 450 word passage on some random topic that virtually nobody's familiar with?
Right. Yeah,
I don't think it's going to work. You can try it out though. You've got time. If you're taking it in November, you've got 4.5 months where you could test that out over the next week. Do 2 sections like that, 2 sections reading the passage, then the questions, and see what feels better, what gets you higher accuracy. My guess is you'll find that reading the questions first just wastes your time.
Because you're going to forget anyway.
You're going to forget anyway. And they're typically asking you for the same kinds of things. They're asking you first, main idea, primary purpose, passage organization questions, general in nature, which are things you should probably know anyway after your initial read. Like if you read a passage and you don't know the main point, then you haven't really gotten anything. To me, that's like the orientation in logic games. Then the detail-oriented questions, they're detailed, they're nuanced, they're on little things that you'd probably have to go back for anyway. So I don't see a real point to reading those first before diving in. You'll want to go back to the passage to find the keywords or phrases and the particular line references regardless.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Glad to help, Chelsea. I know that Benjamin had his hand raised. Benjamin, you want to share what's going on for you?
Yeah, so I'm 11 days out from the July LSAT. And I feel like I'm really close to where I want to be. And I work full time and I go to school full time, but I took the whole week off in advance. I thought I was going to be going out of town to take it in person, but it turns out I'm not, obviously. So I was hoping you might have some advice on just like the best way that I could use that last week. Unfortunately, because of my schedule and leading up to this, I haven't done like a ton of practice tests. I found some like LSAT-Flex, practice digital tests. I had been doing stuff all on paper. And when I first switched over those, my average score kind of took a nosedive, but it's come because I was adjusting to a totally different format that I wasn't used to. And it's come back up to about where I was. And I just kind of want to get a sense of like how I can best use my time over the last week.
Yeah, good question. So the good news is that flex tests are shorter, meaning you can do more of them without too much trouble. Like to tell people to do 3 or 4 exams a week, I wouldn't suggest that with 5-section exams, but 3-section exams to do 3 exams a week could be okay. And you've got just about 2 weeks, slightly less, till the flex. So you could do 3 over the next 7 days, 3 over the following 7 days, review each in detail, and that could be good. Or you could do 2 exams a week and review those in depth. But like I said, it's easier to do 3-section exams than 5-section exams. So timed exams and review is really where I'd focus. And I would do them ideally on Law Hub, or you said that you're using flex format anyway, so that's good. You've got the software, you've got the interactivity, you've got the timing. You're doing it on the same device, right? Like a laptop?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, perfect. So that's all good to me.
So my biggest issue is still like I'm good on logical reasoning. I'm sort of close on reading comp, and I was going to ask you a question about how to annotate. And based on what you're saying here, I'm going to try and usually I'm fine, but every once in a while I kind of cut it down to the wire. So I'm going to see if my comprehension suffers if I stop annotating, in which case it would save me time if it doesn't suffer. So I'm going to give that a shot, and that might solve my problem there. And it's literally just, I feel like I'm always about 3 minutes to 4 minutes short on logic games. My accuracy is good until that last problem when I'm like rushing. And then when that happens, I'm trying to get like squeeze the last point or 2 out. I can, and so if you had any thoughts do you think that I should just try to jam a bunch of logic game sections and maybe do like 1 or 2 full practice tests to keep the other skills like sharp enough? Or should I just do, like you said, full tests?
I would do primarily full tests, but that's what you're going to be doing in 2 weeks. But if you've got the need to drill something in particular, like logic games are giving you trouble or reading comp was giving you trouble, do some more of that on the side.
Okay.
Do some timed sections individually like that on the side, and then review those in depth too, so that at least you're adjusting the proportion of what you're working on.
Sure.
Now we have Emily in the chat here repeating, don't do the logic games in order. Don't do the logic games in order. So I'm not sure if she's referring to the questions within a game or the section overall. But
well, I do jump around both of those, and it's harder. That's harder too, not seeing them laid out on a page. But I'm getting better at that, jumping to different questions and trying to prioritize.
yeah, I think especially for the four
That's a
games
good call out.
for the 4 games in the set, you could skip around a little bit, but there's also an investment cost in
Yeah,
getting
for sure.
familiar with each one. So if you're going to do all 4 anyway, I personally don't think there's a ton of value in saying, oh, number 3 looks hard. I've already diagrammed half the rules. Let me come back to that, because then you have to reinvest yourself in that.
Yeah, I pretty much just look for one. Like I'll do the first question that doesn't look obviously hard. Like as I start looking at, if it's like an ordering one or something like that, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
If I look at it and I go, oh my God, how am I even going to diagram that? Then I go to a different one.
Yeah. I've got a couple of flex things specifically. I think it might be worth discussing a little bit though. I mean, you look a little bit like you're familiar with technology. I see the headset you've got going on there. So
I mean, this is just headphones. I mean, it's
either that or you're in a call center.
Your faith in me, but it does seem like that.
Yeah, right. I bring it up just because I
Really
know
just
that
headphones.
some people have issues with flex and technology and making sure that their system is set up properly. So I want to make sure that there's got a little bit of a connection issue there for a second. I want to make sure that your tech is set up properly. So do you have you tested out your equipment with ProctorU? There's a way to do that.
I did, yeah.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, there's a way you can connect. Did you connect with one of their reps or just do it online?
I did it online and then it gave me a red X, so then I connected with one of the reps and then it was fine.
Nice. So for those who aren't familiar, if you go to testout.proctoru.com with hyphens between tested out, as Benjamin did, you can go and test your equipment. And then if you really want to, you can live chat with a tech rep. And I would do that maybe the day before or 2 days before, just to make sure that your system is good. If you do it 2 weeks before, then your system could run an update and they could have to redo everything anyway. But that's a big thing I would think about. And then let's see, there's no logic posters behind you, so they're not going to think you're cheating or anything. So I think you should be okay.
Yeah, we just kind of have all our books here, but none of them, I don't know. I think it's probably fine.
Yeah, I think you should be good.
Okay.
Cool, Benjamin. Well, I'm going to give someone else a shot, but it's good connecting with you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Hey, Angelica.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, definitely. I'm looking to take the LSAT hopefully in November. So I've been dabbling in LSAT training for like over a year, I would say, in and out. I have a 4.5-year-old. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but it gets difficult with her and just scheduling my time, scheduling myself, and I guess just disciplining myself enough to focus and hone in on what I want to do. So I'll probably be reaching out to you. That was my question, to see if I can form a plan of attack. I don't want to be looking for different sources. I've already done that type of research. I've been looking online, checking viable sources, who does what, and obviously I'm here. So I wanted to, just hone in on your program and form a plan of attack for November so that I can most efficiently use my time and get the highest score I can possibly get.
Cool. Great. Well, like I said before, November gives you a good amount of time. That gives you about 4.5 months between now and test day. Mm-hmm. And maybe you've been doing a little bit of dabbling already. Now you're going to dive deeper on it. And so, as Boston mentioned, I've got study plans. They're super detailed, laying out what to do every single day over the course of your prep, specifically which articles on my site to read before doing relevant practice problems of that type out of the exams. And those are super detailed and specific. You can get those separately for like $20-25. Then you also mentioned the courses. If you want the courses, you'll get a special study plan to use along with those, showing you how to use my course lesson videos along with the actual LSAT exams. And my courses, I have group coaching masterminds where we all get together on a group video call like this. We'll go for typically an hour and a half. I'll answer people's questions, but I also invite students to answer each other's questions too, to really create a community. And you see the same people showing up every single time that we meet, typically twice a month. It really forms a community with accountability, support, and we go deeper on everything. I also have live online masterclasses and Q&As, as well as on-demand video lessons. And you could choose any of those options. The details are all on my site. I'll put them in the chat as well. The courses
I saw that, and I had another question on that. I was trying to see within the time frame that I'm putting for myself, which one of those would be my best option. Also, obviously, I'm not working, stay-at-home mom, and just looking for the best cost-effective, so to speak, one to choose that you'd suggest.
It all depends on how much time you have to devote and whether you can attend the live classes or not. So we're meeting now at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's typically when I run my classes, actually, but I run those on Monday and Tuesday nights. And so if you can regularly make it at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Eastern time, that's when I typically run the classes. I'll sometimes run 2 in a night, and then that's great. If you can't make the classes, then I wouldn't choose a course option that includes the classes, because then you might not be able to take advantage of those. But even if you can't, you can always watch the recordings afterwards. I upload them into the course system typically within a day or two. You can email me. You just shoot me an email, respond to the email that I sent out earlier. I also put the link in the chat. You can just join anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Hey, Christopher.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, thanks. I just had a few questions, actually. My first question is about letters of recommendation. Tomorrow, I'm kind of meeting with I'm in school full-time right now. And I'm meeting with one of my professors to talk to her about writing me a letter of recommendation. So I was just wondering if you can provide any tips about how maybe I should go about, like, what things do law schools like to see in a letter of recommendation, or what information I should provide to my professor in order for her to write an accurate letter of recommendation for me.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So when did you take a class with this professor?
I'm actually in her class.
You're in the class now?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's great because it's fresh.
Exactly, yeah.
So you don't normally my recommendation or advice would be to provide them with a lot of details about you and what you did in the class, like what papers you wrote or assignments you did, what topics you covered. But since you're in the class now, they probably remember all of that pretty well because it's happening. So I would say maybe give them a copy of your personal statement. If you have one, or if you have a draft, if you could provide that to give them a little bit more context about why you want to go to law school in particular, maybe a copy of your resume just for the context as well, that could be useful. But you don't need to provide much more than that. And how many people are in the class?
There's about 75 students in this class.
Okay. Have you gone to office hours?
I haven't, just because everything's online. My school has moved to remote learning now, so she doesn't really have official office hours, but I have taken the opportunity to be in a few Zoom calls with her before I go ahead and ask her tomorrow. So cool. So yeah, I mean, anything you can do to deepen the relationship will help you get a better letter. So you can request the letter tomorrow if you want, but between tomorrow and when she actually writes the letter, I would take any opportunity to get some one-on-one time. So even if there aren't official Zoom office hours, maybe you can arrange a call and find any excuse to do it. If there's an upcoming assignment or an exam and there are things you want to go over, or if you're in class and there's a comment she makes and you want to ask a little bit more about that topic, then you can make an excuse and find maybe have 3 questions ready just to arrange a short 15, 20-minute call with her, just to build a little bit more of a connection, a little bit more familiarity, and show the initiative that you're interested in the topic. That'll give the letter a little extra oomph, most likely. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And another question as well. I don't know if you would be able to answer this or not, but what do you think the August LSAT is going to be? Because that's when I'm going to be writing it. Do you think it's going to be in person, or is it going to be Flex?
Flex.
Okay.
That's my prediction. LSAC hasn't announced this yet. I've heard some chatter that some of their reps over the phone have said it's likely to be Flex, but LSAC has consistently been announcing whether it's Flex about 6 weeks prior. And so that would put us towards mid-July, about 2 weeks from now. They'll probably announce, if not sooner. But I'm guessing August, almost certainly Flex. I would bet on that. And I think October and November are going to be Flex. I can't see how they're going to go forward with the LSAT in person. If somebody got sick from COVID at the LSAT when they had a Flex option previously, that would appear to everybody to be gross negligence. And I don't think they're going to go for that. But they're still holding out hope against hope that things will get better somehow over the next few months. But I don't think they'll get better enough. I don't see it happening. And we see a lot of law schools going online too for the exact same reasons. So I think that LSAC will follow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, of course.
So Steve, so I just want to ask you, from your experience training LSAT, what is normally the variance from what somebody will be scoring when they're actually just taking the course and their actual score? Is the score you're getting when you're training a close indicator of how you're going to perform on the actual score or actual LSAT?
That's a good question. So if you have already built a strong foundation and you've taken a handful of timed sections and a handful of full-length timed exams, at that point, your full-length timed practice should be a decent indication of how you could ultimately do on test day. But I wouldn't place too much stock in any one particular timed LSAT exam because everybody has off days, score fluctuations are totally normal. So I would say after you've done the bulk of your prep, take the average of your most recent 3 to 5 full-length exams, and that'll be the best indication of where you stand, assuming that you have properly simulated test day conditions, meaning that if you're doing the Flex, you're taking your exams on a computer or a tablet if LSAC is going to be mailing you a tablet because you don't have the right equipment. Or if you're doing a digital LSAT in person, that you're doing timed exams on a tablet. Or if you were doing a paper and pencil LSAT, that's the format that you're simulating. But if you're taking a cold diagnostic with little to no previous prep, then I wouldn't place much stock, if any, in those results because you haven't learned the language of the LSAT yet. You got to give yourself time to learn the material. And that's actually why I don't typically recommend cold diagnostics because people usually don't do very well on them. And that's to be expected, really.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Chelsea, was there something else?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So do you think that they're grading the LSAT-Flex much harder than they are than the LSAT that was in person?
No, it'll be the same. They're equating them.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I've been seeing that a lot of people have been saying that they got their test back, but they scored higher than projected. So I don't know if that's like really based on them grading different or them just not knowing that they would score higher. So that's why I asked that.
Yeah, I have a hard time placing too much stock in like the anecdotal results that people give. I don't think LSAC would automatically give everybody a huge boost. They want the results to be equal. And what you see on forums or social media can have a selection bias effect sometimes. People with low scores typically aren't excited to brag about them. People with high scores typically do want to, and then not everybody is telling the truth all the time. So I wouldn't take all of that too seriously, but LSAC wants to make the Flex considered equivalent to the regular, and I think I would trust them to do so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Jenny, you had a question?
For the LSAT-Flex, have they done anything like any change or any improvements? Because I've noticed that we have like mixed reviews between the Protector U, where some people had distractions where they were moving their mouse when they're trying to do their testing and all that other stuff. Have they done any improvements lately or no?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, they have. They've definitely learned a lot from the initial May LSAT-Flex administration. So June was a lot better. The proctors were a lot better. There was better communication between LSAC and Proctor U about what's allowed, what's not allowed. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect, but I think they're going to learn more with each subsequent administration. So I'm hopeful and expectant that July will be even better than June. August will be even better than July, and so on. And listen, if the proctor is misinformed about something, try to tell them. Try to tell them immediately. Ask to show them LSAC's site where whatever is allowed in case they were confused about that. And then the other thing, like I said before, is test out your equipment prior to at least minimize the odds of having a bad result or an issue of some kind. And if your internet is shaky, contact LSAC and they can even give you a credit to stay in a hotel to take the exam there with more reliable internet. So there are lots of little things you could be thinking about now to make it go more smoothly.
And another thing, because I've been checking my laptop constantly and I'm still confused, but like say if your laptop is like a 2-in-1, because like it's both a tablet and also a laptop, it's not like a Surface ordeal, do I still have to contact LSAT to make sure that the one that I have, the equipment that I have is allowable to use for the LSAT?
Yeah, it would never hurt to ask them. Yeah, I would definitely ask just to confirm, especially if you can get it in writing. That's even better. That way, on test day, if the proctor is confused, you can say, no, I've got the email from LSAC in writing confirming that this should be allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And get that email to them now because it takes them a while to get back to people and you want to get that response as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course, for sure. Caroline?
Hi, sorry. So I've never taken the LSAT like in person. I've never taken it at all, and I'm taking it in July, so like 9 days. Will it be easier for me to get a higher score on it, or will it be about the same as if I were taking it in person?
The idea is that it should be the same.
Okay.
But if you are likely to do better in a comfortable home environment, if you don't have tech issues, if your internet's good, it could be more pleasant test day experience, and that could give you a boost. If you would have been distracted by other people in the room or the proctors or just the stress of having to go somewhere, then maybe all of that could work in your favor. So
And,
it all depends.
With the August LSAT most likely going to be online, I'll be back at school already. Should I be able to also take it like on school Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's all my questions.
Cool. Sure, glad to help. Monique, do you have a question?
I have a question. Is there a problem with it being a PC or a Mac? If you have that on Flex, I'm supposed to take it in November. And my issue is that I was going to take it in Rhode Island. I live in Virginia. They had me, my address as Rhode Island because my master's was in Rhode Island from the law school and blah, blah, blah. And so it was fine. I was going to take it in Rhode Island. I'm anticipating that it's going to be a flex, so I'll take it wherever. But I have a Mac, so I'm kind of, is that a problem that it's not a PC?
No, Mac should be fine. ProctorU works with Macs, but one thing I do want to call your attention to for any Mac users is there's an issue with the newest Mac operating system that is not compatible with ProctorU's security software. So your proctor on test day, or maybe the day prior, needs to change some of the settings on your computer in order to make it work with ProctorU's system. I think it's the Catalina operating system. If you just Google ProctorU macOS Catalina, you'll find the details on that. And that is something I would work out with ProctorU at that Test It Out website beforehand, maybe a day or two prior, so that you're ready to go on the actual day of.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Christopher, you had another question?
Yeah, Steve, it's just about my LSAT studying. So I began studying at the beginning of May. Just around the same time, I also started the summer semester of school. So my LSAT studying since then has been kind of on and off, just because I've been primarily focusing on school. But now that school is dying down a bit more, I've completed most of my assignments and I don't have any exams for the courses that I'm in, I'm going to be starting to focus more on my LSAT studying. So my plan is kind of to do like a 9 to 5 LSAT studying Monday to Sunday, and then after 5 is any additional schoolwork that I have. In your experience, is that healthy per se to do like a 9 to 5 studying for LSAT? Do you think I'll burn out? Do you think I won't memorize things, or what do you suggest?
Well, I wouldn't be trying to memorize things. To me, the question more is just burnout. And that is a potential risk. I think 8 hours a day of LSAT is probably too much for most people. I would aim to dial it down, keep it manageable, maybe 2.5 hours before lunch, 2.5 hours after lunch. That's it. And you're done with the LSAT for the day. And any schoolwork you do after that should be relatively light, because it's still academic in nature. It's still studying somewhat complex material, I imagine. So I would say on a day that you've got a lot of schoolwork, maybe do a little bit less LSAT prep. LSAT prep is another kind of schoolwork in a way, and I would treat it like maybe a 6-credit class. So I would have some days that are more LSAT heavy, some days that are more schoolwork heavy, and then some days that are just lighter in general. I've got a page on my site where I break down potential study schedules, not over a 3-month or 5-month timeline, but over the course of a single day. What does your LSAT prep look like? And so I'm going to put that link in the chat. I've got a graphic about it as well. But the idea is you wake up, you eat breakfast, shower, work out, whatever, 2 to 3 hours of LSAT, break for lunch, another 2 to 3 hours, break, and that's it. And then you could relax in the evening, do a little bit of schoolwork, and then flip things around the following day just to mix it up.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, of course. But burnout's a real risk, though, so be wary of that.
Okay.
Margaret, you want to share what's going on for you?
It's very difficult. And I can't figure out another way how I'm going to get this stuff stuck in my brain, because I have learning disabilities. I have a slow processing speed, short-term memory loss, and I have a case of dyscalculia. So this is like the really hardest thing for me to do. This is, and I just got off the phone with a woman who's blind, and she told me, Margaret, if I practice law for all these years, you can do it too. And I'm just trying to figure out what's the best place for me to get the help that I need besides this odyssey. Because I don't want to schedule the test because I did horribly the first time. And I have that fear of scheduling the test after I've finished all this training, and then my score isn't good enough. And then I have to go back and study again for another try. And I don't know if anybody's got any other suggestions on how to do this, because I'm looking at 6 LSAT books here that I read and I read and I read. And I also sit through a lot of webinars to listen to other people. And, it gets frustrating. It gets very, very frustrating. So, if you have some thoughts, please share them with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate your being so vulnerable and open about your experience, because this is a really difficult process for a lot of people, especially if there's learning issues and processing issues that can make it even harder. So you're not alone in that. I've met a lot of other folks in a similar situation. And the truth is that it's a longer road. It's a more difficult climb, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that for you. I wish I could tell you something right now that's going to make the whole process super easy, but the truth is that it is going to take time and it is going to take an investment. And I think you already know that. And you've already been through a number of programs already. And so one thing I'll say is that you won't suffer due to lack of resources. There's more free and low cost stuff out there than I offer scholarships on all my LSAT courses for those with LSAT fee waivers. I've also run public interest scholarships as well, including one very recently, and I'll do another one at some point not too long from now too. And the idea is that myself and others in the LSAT prep industry are really committed to making the process more affordable, more accessible, even free at sometimes. And I've got tons on the YouTube channel and the podcast and the blog and social and all of that. And so I'm putting out information all the time. The biggest thing I would say as a starting point is my study plans. I have free ones, I have low cost ones, and they're meant to break down the process for you so that you can make the best use of all the different information out there, just to break it down and help you know how to use everything. So that's where I would suggest starting, really. What's your target test date?
I don't have one right now. Right now, I'm just, I've been looking at the schedule, and I put it off because I also just had rotator cuff surgery. and it's very difficult for me to sit with my right arm, which is my primary arm, on a laptop or on a keyboard, because I'm in a lot of pain at times. So I'm trying to I'm pushing it off as far as I can, but also trying to drag out those 40 hours as long as I can. Because, this is a long process, and, to be really honest, those logic games, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't get it, and I think when I'm really ready to learn it, to get it really into my head, I think then I'll know that I'm ready to take the test. But it's been almost 2 years ago that I took it. And I know that LSAT reset the whole process of how many times you can take the test and all that. But yet still, I don't want to narrow it down a date, because if I'm not ready, I'm not ready. I'm going to do lousy on it, and now with doing it online and all that, I'm not good at online stuff. I never was good at online classes. That's why I never took classes online. Everything was in person. you know, and I notice here, I'm the oldest one here sitting in front of everybody.
The oldest one on video, at least.
Yeah, on video. At least I can see that everybody here so far that I'm looking at, you guys are a lot younger than I am. But, you know, I've met people who are older students and still go to law school. But, you know, I mean, if I can't pass it with a decent score, and I've been reading, I read a lot on a lot of stuff, you know, about the book that I heard about bridging the gap between college and law school, and then reading what I need to do to get to that point. You know what the perfect LSAT score is 180. You know, I'm never going to get that, but I'm reading everything of what I can do to prepare myself for that, and then also thinking if I can't get a decent score to get into the public schools like UC Irvine, UCLA, you know, or some of the others, you know, the California public schools, then I've got to look at what am I going to be able to do, because they'll only pay so much for the private schools, and Loyola would be my next target school. So I have to look, what are they looking for as a score? You know, what are they looking for? Plus two, you know, I have to, you know, I got to make sure that too, that my personal statement, my diversity statement, you know, and my addendums, you know, are on target.
Yeah.
So all of that, and I've already written my personal statement, you know, and I've made sure that every school that I'm applying to has a different folder, so nobody gets the same, you know, the wrong letter and the wrong personal statements and the wrong addendums. But you know, it's a lot writing there.
Yeah, there's a lot in this. There's a lot in this. I want to share a couple of quick thoughts with you. One is that even if you are an older applicant, there are plenty of other older applicants too, even if they're not all on video for this call right now. And like I said, it may be a tougher road, but the fact that you're allowing the time, as you said, you don't want to take it until you feel ready. And then you don't want to even choose a target test date until you know that you've got that foundation set in place. So know that because you're willing to invest the time and give it as much as it needs, you can get there. And I wouldn't dismiss a 180. It could be harder for you than others, but I wouldn't write it off out of the gate. If you really want to learn this exam and master it, you can. Like you said, you've got 40 hours of tutoring that you're going to use. If you want to make the most use out of those, you know how to do that. You can go into sessions with super specific targeted questions on games where you've already watched the video explanations for them first, so that you go in prepared and you can make maximal use of that time. So believe in yourself, trust the process. You're giving it the time that it needs. You've obviously researched the process a lot as well. You've gone through multiple programs, so you know what's involved in acing this exam, and you're committed. And I just want to thank you for showing up again and really showing yourself so fully in this call, because I think a lot of people tend to hide some of these things, and your story and you sharing it helps them know that they're not going through it alone. So I just want to thank you for joining the call. I know some other folks had their hands raised, so I want to make sure we have time to get to them too, but thank you for joining, Margaret. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to mention to Margaret, like the last phrase you say, it's not the end of the world. Margaret, I'm 50 this July 5th. I graduated NYU at 40, and everyone is different. And if you have a passion for law school, especially public interest law school, listen to Steve Schwartz. I've watched his videos for a year right now, and he's good. He knows people, and he knows how to acclimate to every style of learning. Margaret.
I just turned 60. I'm going to be 61 in November. I graduated college at 59. So, you know, I'm hanging in there.
Well, thanks for that, Margaret. And thanks for that, Garth. So, Jenny, do you have another question? So your hand is still raised.
Yeah, I'm preparing for the LSAT in August, and I know that LSAT is in Flex. I'm trying to figure out how to do the reading comp and the logical reasoning. And for some reason, every time I get the question wrong, it's either because I second guess myself or I say to myself, oh, I knew the answer, but for some reason, I don't know why I chose that answer. Is there a way to like get out of that rut?
Yeah. What does your review process look like?
For me, it was most like reading through all the chapters, highlighting and trying to make like understanding notes to see what's like how I can do it. And then I just read their drills. Like
I mean more review.
Oh,
like
like
you got a
review?
question wrong. What do you
yeah.
do next?
Mostly I would just go through the book because the complaint book has their answers and they explain to me why this answer is right, but the others are wrong. But I still can't like understand why certain answer is wrong when that one's right. So I'm always saying to myself, why am I not getting anything? Like, why am I not understanding why it's wrong? Even though I'm trying to read over the book that's been trying to tell me this is the reason why, and then it's still not getting in my head. And then I went through multiple YouTube, LSAT stuff from you and all the other ones, and I'm still not processing it well enough to understand fully before I do my test, and I'm having a hard time.
I hear you. All right. Well, there's two things I'll say. One is that the Kaplan explanations are not very good. And it might not seem classy of me to say that. I'm not looking to criticize all competition, but Kaplan in particular, I'm willing to call out because they've gotten bad results for so many of my students for so long. The Kaplan explanations, they don't really draw distinctions between necessary assumption and sufficient assumption questions. I don't know why they haven't fixed that for my entire career. That's been an issue, and it's confusing for students. Some of the things in their explanations are just plain wrong. So I would put those aside. Other sources, though, are likely better, and it's more just about finding which sorts of explanations sticks best for you, both in terms of who is writing the explanations, as well as the medium in which you're getting them. So do you prefer videos? Do you prefer written? You might like one or the other. Then you might like my style versus somebody else's style. So find whichever source you like and just go with that. There's more free and low cost explanations out there than ever before. So find a source that you like for prep tests specifically, so that when you have a problem with, let's say, exam 75, section 4, question 13, you can go somewhere and get an explanation that you know is going to be relatively thorough and get you where you need. But the other thing I'll say is that it's not all about reading explanations. When I talk about the review process, explanations are just one part of that. There's also the work that you do to articulate your own thought process. I recommend what I call the Socratic review method, which is a detailed process of inquiry leading you to determine where your misunderstanding stemmed from. Was it the question stem, the stimulus, or the answer choices? Then more specifically, where within the stimulus was there a problem for you? What specifically gave you trouble about it? What did LSAC use to increase the difficulty level of that stimulus? Or if it was in the answer choices, what was tempting about the wrong answer that made you pick it? And what ultimately made it wrong? And what was discouraging about the right answer that pushed you away from it? And what ultimately made it correct? So you have these traps of encouragement towards the wrong answer and traps of discouragement away from the right answer. And I have a detailed class I previously taught. It's on the YouTube channel where I lay out question review strategies in more depth. And this is what I would recommend for you in terms of deepening your review process if the explanations that you're finding elsewhere aren't enough for you. And this is really what I would recommend regardless, even before explanations, is to articulate it for yourself, either write it out or talk it out with a study buddy or a partner or a coach or a tutor. Because if you're just doing it all in your head, it's not going to be deep enough. You have to actually put it out into the world, either writing in a notebook, like a mistake journal, or talking it out with somebody. Really important. And this takes time. And it'll mean that you can't do as many full-length exams, but it's incredibly important.
See, Chris brought up burnout. I just wanted to know what does burnout look like, or what are signs coming up? Is it the screen getting blurry, or you just not being able to tap into your mind, or is there something else that I should look out for? Because I'm doing very heavy or a lot of study hours right now as well.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it could look different for every person, But what I typically find folks have in common with it is that they will be studying a lot each day, not taking a whole lot of breaks, and then their scores are dropping and they're sick of this exam. And those things, and they're like getting more and more frustrated, pulling out their hair, not knowing why their scores are not going to, why their scores are not going up, or why their scores, or even worse, are going down. And so anything you can do to avoid being in that situation, namely taking breaks and not doing tons of full-length exams, will better serve you. Sometimes less is actually more when it comes to studying for the LSAT.
Cool. I appreciate that. My next question, when I'm getting ready to apply for the 2021 year, when I've read about obviously the personal statement, letter of diversity, public interest, all these different letters. Is the personal statement the only one that's, or excuse me, are those all going to be per school based as far as, you know, the details that they're looking for are from each school, or what? Because there's not really a lot of information on the LSAC side about it. Just out of curiosity, do you have an answer for that?
You'll generally be able to use the same personal statement for all schools. And if you, obviously you want to be careful not to mention one school in another school's application, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, you can use the same statement for all schools. But for specifics, I would contact each school or just look at their application to make sure that you're addressing whatever it is. Because some schools, the occasional school may have a different type of question, and you want to make sure that you're addressing that. And then they also have supplemental questions too sometimes.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. See, someone named Cone Mediation had a question or a hand raised.
Hi, I'm on someone else's computer. And
okay.
I took the test in June and had a really rough go of it. And I'm going to take July. You know, the environment where I'm taking the test, it's noisy. It's just not optimal for being able to focus. I'm having a really hard time like motivating myself to study on this last push. And I was just wondering if you have any advice for me on how to control my nerves, any thoughts I should have as I sit down before the test starts, or just to be a little bit more emotionally prepared this time than I was in June.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, what have you done to simulate the test experience?
I've taken some practice tests. I've, you know, gone over my results. Before, when I was studying, I actually sat down and tried to take the test the same time I was expected to take the test, and, you know, at the exact desk with the exact laptop. So I try to simulate my test experience, and then I kind of got a little bit derailed from having, you know, it just didn't go the way I expected it to. And I've studied a long time and really hard. So I'm trying to keep myself back up and in the game so I can get my head where it needs to be, so I can sit down, you know, in less than 2 weeks and just give it my all in July.
That's great. Yeah, the more of that you can do, the better. So that test day is like just another dry run. The more preparation, the more simulation, it'll help. Somebody in the chat is mentioning noise canceling headphones like Sony and Bose. At least for your studying, as long as you don't become reliant upon them, that could help. And then the other thing I would talk about and think about a little bit is that you're taking July, but that's not necessarily the last test date you have available to you, right? Like you could do August, you could do October. Is that a possibility for you?
October would be really rough, but if I needed to do August, I could. I mean, do you think that there's any negative, if I took June and then I take July and then I schedule August, do you think that that's going to place me in a negative light when I'm applying for law school?
Not necessarily. And there are trade-offs here. Like taking 3 consecutive LSATs, some admission officers might not love to see that. But the plus side would be if one of those 3 was it and you were done after that point, then you could apply relatively earlier in the cycle. Alternatively, you could skip August and go for October or November and still apply this cycle. That'd be totally fine too. It wouldn't be too late.
Okay, so I still could apply for the 2021 cycle if I take it in the fall.
The July LSAT in particular, it's not the end all be all. Even though the LSAT as a whole is incredibly important, you can retake. And so the reason I brought that up is to just point out that it's not all riding on that one day. If there's a tech issue or you fumble a game or something, you can retake. They don't average multiple scores. They only take the highest. So it's not the end of the world.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate you taking your time tonight.
Yeah, of course. Ali, did you have a question?
How many hours do I need to study for LSAT in the day?
Okay, sure. Good question. I mean, it'll vary depending on your other obligations. Some people might do only 2 to 3 hours. Others could do 5 to 6 hours. Like I was mentioning earlier, I wouldn't recommend doing more than 5 to 6 hours because that puts you at risk of burnout. There's only so much dedicated, focused studying you can do in a single day without it being too much. Obviously, that number is going to be different for every person, but I'd say 6 hours is a good upper limit there for the typical person. And then make sure you're taking breaks throughout. It also depends on what your timeline is. If you're taking the LSAT 6 months from now, don't feel the need to do 6 hours a day consistently. You could take a day off, you could take a week off. If your LSAT's in 2 weeks though, then I would try to do a little bit more, relatively speaking.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, folks, we've been going here for a while and we've gotten a lot of great topics, a lot of great questions here. I want to thank you all for coming and for asking such great questions, for being so vulnerable, for being so open, for sharing your thoughts, your questions, your experiences. Please keep in touch and let me know if I can help in any way as you move forward. As you all know, I'm really accessible. I'm happy to help however I can. But I wish you all good night and thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your heart, man. You have a big heart. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you
everybody.
so much. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.